Two of my favourite space games of all time were released in the late 80s and early 90s. Video game technology has come along a long way since then, and of course, space games are once again pretty popular here in 2021. But how have expectations changed towards them since their resurgence around 10 years ago? And do players now expect the impossible? At one point, it seemed that the simple act of having a spaceship, along with the freedom to fly it through space, was all people wanted. But here, today, it seems as though players want so much more. Let's jump back to those early space games for a moment then, to get an idea of where things started. Starglider 2 was released all the way back in 1988. Not the true start of space games, but a point in time where technology had gotten sufficiently advanced enough to portray a semi-believable environment. Starglider 2 then was a stunner for its time. Full of 3D graphics with the ability to fly through space as well as to fly around planets. It might look rudimentary by today's standards, but in 1988 this was cutting edge. Combat was intense and exploration was engaging, including the great explorable tunnels on planets. Also, let's not forget those space whales. The other title was Frontier Elite 2, released in 1993. Again, a space game that allowed players to explore, this time on a significant scale with hundreds of star systems and thousands of planets to land upon. Elite 2 allowed trading and fighting. It also allowed remote mining by leaving drones behind on planetary surfaces, not to mention many other activities such as bounty hunting, transporting goods, passenger ferrying, and much more. All the features offered by these two games sound familiar, don't they? It's reasonable to suggest that these titles became a template for many other space games that came later. But eventually, space games more or less disappeared for a decade between 2000 and 2011. Egosoft meanwhile managed to carry the torch for space gaming between that decade with the X series. Eventually though, space gaming was to emerge on force in 2012. This big comeback came in the form of Star Citizen from Chris Roberts and Elite Dangerous from David Rayburn. From the enthusiastic response by the gaming community, it was clear thousands of people wanted more of the same. More space, more ships, more adventures. And for a while, it seemed that these two new games would recreate space games of the 90s whilst using modern gaming tech. People were certainly eager for detailed spaceships, a vast plane space, combat, trading, and adventure in general. At some point though, expectations of what a space game could be changed. Time and ambitious promises started to suggest what might just be possible one day. Imagination is a powerful thing, isn't it? Show someone a glimpse of what might be possible, and the imagination will extrapolate. But this extrapolation doesn't happen in isolation. After all, it's a point of fact that gaming tech has indeed advanced tremendously. It's certainly fair to say that open world games in general have started to become more and more about living a life in a virtual world. The more complex, detailed and involving that world is, the better. In short, the possibilities of what a game can be is so much more than it was back in 2012. The reason for this is very simple. Games have already shown what is possible by leading the way. Naturally, this means that each new game is expected to exceed the possibility of previous games. Which brings us back to space games. Today in 2021, the question of what a space game can be and what it should be is very different to what it was in 2012. Games have grown, possibilities have expanded, and technology has progressed by several generations. This rapid pace of progress naturally poses a heavy challenge to most game studios. The Witcher 3 offered more than The Witcher 2. Cyberpunk 2077 offered more than The Witcher 3. At least, in theory, there's a development trap right there. Yet, for every perceived failure, there's many successes. Red Dead Redemption 2 was a substantial step up to GTA 5. And there's many more examples out there, which in turn brings a very specific problem. The pressure it puts on games development. And whilst I've cited the standalone titles so far, the pressures are arguably even heavier for live service games. A game that is expected to be played year after year without any sequels is also expected to keep up with the changes within the industry. For example, Warframe of 2021 is an immensely different game to Warframe of 2013. It's an evolution of necessity. Games that don't change, stagnate, and the players move on. All of these challenges then place the current crop of space games in a very interesting position, and each of them are facing up to this challenge in different ways. EVE Online, by far the oldest of the current online space games, just released its latest update. Gateway aims at bringing new players into the game with brand new player experiences. The complexity of EVE has often been a long-standing challenge, and CCP continue to attempt to find new ways to keep interest alive and bring new players in. Meanwhile, Elite Dangerous recently released its Odyssey expansion, bringing players an on-foot experience for the first time. This marks a true evolution as it introduces a completely new perspective to the game in the form of first-person gameplay. Yet it unfortunately fails to come even close to the first-person standards of a modern game. The Odyssey gameplay feels very much like a throwback to 15 years ago. Yet it's impossible to deny that Elite Dangerous has expanded the possibilities of space gaming by an order of magnitude, with both its one-to-one recreation of the galaxy and its expansive flight model. Whilst not technically a live service game, X4 from Egosoft is a long-standing title with continuous ongoing development. The latest expansion, Cradle of Humanity, added a significant amount of new content, and over the years, the X series really has highlighted just how engaging a space game can be. And then there's Star Citizen. It remains an ambitious title as ever. If ever there were a game that had the concept of leading design by attempting to be at the forefront of what is possible, along with a massive list of promised features, then Star Citizen is that game. Yet its lengthy development, missed development timeframes, and often delayed roadmap pose significant problems. What's more, gaming and graphics technology and games industry in general constantly outpace much of Star Citizen's development, meaning that CIG is caught in a situation of constant iteration and catch-up. Yet, no one can deny that Star Citizen has dramatically focused attention on what space games can aspire to. No Man's Sky, meanwhile, continues to surprise with each new update. Hello Games have perhaps the best development release cycle of all modern space games. That is, regular updates that fundamentally shift the focus of the game and expand upon what is possible. No Man's Sky isn't trying to be the best space game out there, rather it is trying to be the best version of itself. Ultimately then, I feel that last sentence is fundamental in making a good game. That is, aiming to make a title the best version of itself. Personally, I believe No Man's Sky leads the pack in that regards. However, all that said, in the end, all 5 titles I just mentioned have shifted expectations of what a space game can be, what a space game should be. It's a never-ending evolution, within which the player base will never fully be satisfied and will always continue to desire more. Existing titles have their work cut out for them as they need to somehow match pace with this constantly evolving demand. Yet ultimately, it's the future games that will likely push the boundaries of both player expectations as well as what is technologically possible. Starbase, Hunternet Starfighter, Squadron 42, In the Black, Everspace 2, Kerbal Space Program 2 and Starfield are just a few of the titles that are focusing people's attention on the possibilities of future space games. So, do these titles have their work cut out for them? Are player expectations now so unreasonably and unfairly high? Or is high expectations a consequence of the never-ending evolution of gaming tech? What type of gameplay would you like to see future space games deliver? Let me know in the comments section below, I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.